Very good. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call to order the December 14, 2022 Operations Budget and Fiscal Affair Committee meeting. My name is Dr. Kenneth Harris, Chair of the committee and representative for District 7. Thank you, everyone, for being here today, and also thank you for all of my other colleagues for joining me today. Dr. Miller, Vice Chair Madeline Lasalle-Frazier, and then we have two additional board members joining us, other Dr. Miller, Dr. Zipporah Miller, and board member Boozer Struthers. Thank you for being here today. And also hello to board office staff, administrative staff, and guests. Ms. Barton, would you please call the roll?
Good evening, everyone. Dr.
Good
Kenneth
evening.
Harris,
Present.
Mrs. Lasalle-Frazier,
Present.
Dr. Juanita Miller,
Present.
Mr. David Murray. We have quorum.
All right. Moving to item 1.3, the adoption of the meeting agenda. May I have a motion to adopt the December 14, 2022 meeting agenda with the amendment that we swap item 3.2 and 3.1, just the order of them. They'll still happen on the agenda.
So move, Mr. Chair, that we accept the change in the agenda.
Very good. May I have a second?
I second.
All right. Can I call for a consensus vote?
Yes.
All right, very good. No objections. I'm hearing none. Motion passes to accept the December 14th meeting agenda. Moving on to 1.4, the approval of the November 16th, 2022 meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve those meeting minutes from November 16th, 2022?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the November 16th.
Second.
Very good. It's been moved in second to approve the November 16th, 2022 meeting minutes. May I call for unanimous consensus vote?
So move. Yes, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Jumping into public comment, we have no registered public comment speakers today. Again, I'd like to take that time to remind the public that you are able to register for public comment for this committee and every other committee for the Prince George's County Board of Education, as well as the full general body meetings. So we have no registered public comment today, as well as no public comment from our labor partners this evening. So jumping straight into our discussion for section 3.1, which was formerly 3.2, I'll yield the floor to Dr. Mark Fawcett, our Chief Operating Officer, to give us an update. The floor is yours, sir.
Good evening, Committee Chair Dr. Harris and fellow board members and general public. First of all, we appreciate you modifying the schedule this evening, as Dr. Coleman and myself have another appointment meeting that we must attend. So thank you for that. So tonight we're just going to give a brief update on the replacement of a project of Suitland High School, which is over a 300,000 square foot facility that we are currently replacing. It's a full replacement. The construction has started, and that construction is actually in the demo stage. Suitland High School is going to be a phased construction project, a phased project over 4 to 5 years. And that's primarily because of the size of the school and not being able to relocate the students while we're in construction is why we decided to have a phased project. So as some of you may have heard, because we do quarterly meetings, which you can find those dates on our website, but we recently had a meeting last week on December the 7th, where we gave an update on the status of Suitland and where we were. And currently, we are having some minor delays in the permitting process for our construction phase. Suitland, as I said earlier, has started the demo. We have demoed the back portion of the main building at this time. The second, or the little gym, and the ROTC wing has been demolished to make way for the initial phase of construction. Even though we anticipate getting the construction permits the first of the new year, 2023, this, however, has not delayed our goal of opening phase 1 by fall of 2024. So my understanding is, as of right now, Turner Cornick Project, who are our construction team, has said that the delays at this particular point are not affecting the substantial completion for opening of phase one, which again is going to take place in fall of 2024. So that's our update on Suitland right now. Once again, all of these updates are available on the website. We do quarterly meetings to keep the Suitland community and Prince George's County Public Schools community as a whole updated. And you can find those by going to ptcps.org and search capital programs, and the Suitland project will be right there for you to monitor. That's all we have tonight, Dr. Harris.
Very good. Thank you for that report.
Excuse me, Dr.
Fawcett.
Harris. Dr.
Yep.
Harris, I
Yes,
apologize, you all. I have one of the senators on the phone, and they want to know about the Suitland meeting tonight. Is that an open meeting, Mr. Fawcett?
Yes, ma'am. It is a meeting open to the Suitland community, and it begins at 6:30, and it's an in-person meeting.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I shared that. So it's at the high school. Is it in the auditorium or in the building?
It's in the auditorium.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Harris, for that. Let me interrupt.
No problem. Any other questions from colleagues for Mr. Fawcett before, or Mr. Coleman before we let them get to their other event tonight? All right, sounds good. So we'll move right along to the next section. Dr. Fawcett, thanks for joining us. Dr. Coleman, you as well. Be safe. Thank you for doing the event. Before we move on to the next section, I want to say good evening to Delegate Landis, who is here, and Board Member David Murray, who I see is on the call. And I saw, and Board Member Staley Adam Stafford. Good evening, everyone. So moving into item 3.2, which was formerly 3.1, will now do the FY 2024 CEO proposed operating budget presentation, which will include our new budget amendment template. The floor is yours, sir. Mr. Herbstman, sorry, didn't even introduce you. Our CFO, Mr. Michael Herbstman. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Harris. As you are all aware, the Board of Education adopted a new process in November for the Board of Education requested budget. Tonight, we wanted to discuss one aspect of that, the template that you all be using as board members as a guide for amendments that you're proposing. So I'll share my screen and we'll go right into can I actually share my screen, Ms. Barden, because I want to use the Excel version and run through it. All right, thank you. One sec. Sorry, just one second.
Take your time, man.
Okay, there we go. So I'm just going to run through a quick demonstration of the amendment template. And I used a sample amendment to try to illustrate this. In the agenda tonight, you'll see both the template in PDF format and this sample in case you want to look back at it as later when you're working on your own. So the first page that you'll see is the contents. This is really links to all of the forms that you will be completing in this process and all the individual sections. The completion check here is really just for you if you want to check off as you're working on this to ensure that you're completing all of the sections. The first section is general information. So you'll begin running through this in the Board of Education sponsorship section. Took the liberty of filling this out ahead of time to make this a little quicker, but you'll first be filling out your name as the lead sponsor. And then if you do have other co-sponsors on this, you can select from the drop-down menu each of those co-sponsors, put room in here for 3, but if there's additional beyond that, there's also a space to write in additional names here. I want to point out before I go further into this that for each of these sections, there's just directions here. These won't print, the directions won't print when you actually print out these pages, but this gives you explicitly what to do. And if there are specific things like later, you'll see this area will autofill in some areas. And some will say things like this has a character maximum of 250 characters, but those directions should be clear in here. So after you complete the Board of Education sponsorship, you'll move into the administration implementers. And here we're asking you to determine who you think is likely to be the lead division for this. So for this example, it's going to be in the grants financial management area. So that's in our Division of Business Management Services. It'll autofill the chief's name, and then you could write in what the lead department would be. This is just where you think it'll be, but we could always adjust this as we go on, or you could ask us questions throughout this. As you're filling out the forms, feel free to reach out to the administration to ask those types of questions. Then for the general amendment elements, first we have the amendment name. This is the thing that we'll be calling it. So we want to keep this very simple, just a few words so that everyone's clear what we're talking about. I put in fake here because in this one I am explicitly talking about changing positions, and none of that is real. So I don't want anyone to pick this up and think that this is actually impacting people's actual employees. Then we have the proposed amendment start date. Because this is FY 2024, this should be somewhere between July 1st, 2023 and June 30th, 2024. Then we have any or the type of amendment, and there's really just three choices. It's really an addition, a reduction, or another change. And that will impact later on some of the forms that, or some of the parts that you'll be asked to fill out. Then we have a very brief amendment description. This is what we'll put on any of the summary forms, just so someone could pick this up and look right away. What is this amendment intended to do? And then we have a much more detailed description where you could write as much as you want. This, again, the main point of this is to guide your discussions with colleagues as you consider whether to add these amendments or not. So whatever you feel is necessary to explain your amendment to colleagues that they'll later be voting on. Other questions in this section is this a pilot program? We're trying to see if this is looking to ramp up, if it's successful, or if this is something where we're looking to do the entire thing in the first year of it. And then related to that, there's a question about whether this is ongoing or a one-time expense. And for most of these, there's going to be a yes, no, or some sort of drop down to just guide the response so they're consistent. In each of the, yes.
I don't mean to cut you off. Can you blow the text up a little bit?
Oh, yes. Sorry about that.
Just a little, because I see you got some unused columns on the side. Might as well. Appreciate you. That was a lot, but I appreciate you.
All right. Then for each of these sections, we really have other key background or other key information. Just because these types of amendments could go in so many different directions, we want to make sure that you have some place where if it's not covered elsewhere on the form, that you have the ability to write in additional information. This one is specifically on background, so it's whatever background you think your colleagues need to make a decision on this. Then we have priority alignment. We're asking whether this aligns with the strategic plan, Transformation 2026 outcome goals and strategic imperatives. So these again are drop-down menus, so you could select the outcome goal that it aligns with, or in the case where it doesn't, you'd select none. That's again for the outcome goals and strategic imperatives. Then for the Board of Education operating budget priorities, we didn't put all 39 in here, but we did put the categories that you put them in when you pass those. And then the same for the CEO focus area. You have a drop down of her 3 focus areas for this year or none. The rest of this form, because this first form is really meant to be a summary, will autofill from other areas. So we'll talk about how all the stakeholders are, how many stakeholders are affected in these different areas by student, school, position, and department. And then when you get to the budget piece, it'll start filling in here the actual budget of the program. So you can look at this first page of that total summary. Then you'll move on to the stakeholder impact analysis. is really a series of questions for you about whether, in your view, these areas are affected. And that will help determine which forms you'll be filling out later in the template. So for example, does this amendment affect students? Does it affect schools, departments? And then we have questions about new positions, reductions in positions. That will help to determine if you have to fill out, if it does affect students, you'll fill out the student impact analysis. That's really how this works. So here I selected yes, this does affect students. Here I got a little way from the grants example because that amendment really didn't affect students. So I kind of made up some data here, but what this is doing here is just saying this amendment.
Sorry,
students.
Mr. Hertzman. Ms. Hertzman,
Yeah.
again, blow it up for me, please.
I'll try to do that on each one.
Yeah, no, it's thank you.
So here it's saying this amendment affects students, please complete the below. But it's actually going back to the portion here, where we said whether it's going to be an addition, reduction, or change. So it's going to ask you to skip the section for addition, skip the section for reduction, and go on to the section for change. These are all very similar, but there's some subtle differences. So it'll gray out the areas you're not being asked to fill out. If before you actually fill this out, there will be things in here. So it'll tell you ahead of time, do not fill out this section until you filled out whatever it is, tab 2B, section A, or whatever it is, so you know what order you need to go in, but it should be pretty clear if you're going forward through this. So it'll gray out the areas you're not doing. It'll ask you here questions about, because this is a student impact analysis and this is a change in program, how many students are currently affected, how many would be affected after the change, describing how they're affected, what are the intended outcomes for those students, and then how would we, if this is implemented, how would we intend to evaluate whether the intended outcomes were actually being met. And then it gives you an opportunity in each of these stakeholder sections to really, if you have available information, to give data-driven evidence of the effectiveness of that amendment. So this might be things like potentially, if you have questions about this and you ask for data from administration during the question and answer timeline, which is really starting now, you might want to include some charts here or things that really drive home your case for why you're requesting this amendment. It could also be, in this case, things like articles that discusses the effectiveness of this type of thing. But whatever you have to share with your colleagues. And again, in each of these sections, you'll see any other considerations that you'd like to share. The school impact analysis is very similar to the student one. The one part I'd point out here is really when you get into which schools would be affected by this, if there's a reason that you're only selecting a small group of schools, we're going to ask you to say how they were chosen for inclusion in this, so everyone's aware of the method you used. Could be as simple as like this only applies from kindergarten to second grade, so we chose all elementary schools, but this gives you a place to explain that. And then again, evidence for impacts on schools. The departments, this might be a little harder to fill out, but you could ask for administration's assistance on this, or work with us to complete this. It's really about which departments would be working on this, how it would affect current departments. So in my example, this one has a very direct effect because we're talking about changing positions in our grant financial management office is really what the amendment is. So that has direct effects, but they might not be as obvious. And then again, any other key considerations. And then we move into the financial analysis. And this is intended to be as simple as possible, starting with positions. So each line, the instructions are here. Sorry, this is the category, then the instructions are here on what we're asking you to do. Most of the end of this will be auto-filled. So for column B here, you'll be selecting from a drop-down menu if this is a new position, a reduction in position, or a change in position. For the example here, I included two new positions and a reduction. Then we'll ask the funding source. I'm guessing for most of these situations for board amendments, this will be unrestricted operating funds. But if there is a specific amendment that you're requesting in one of our grant programs or our non-operating programs, then you could pull that down from the drop-down menu. And then if you are actually, this is an example where we're asking for a change in a grant, we would need to know the name of the grant that you're referring to here. Then for these new positions, we're asking for the number of FTE. And then if these are new, if this is a new position, does the title already exist? And the way that you could tell that is both from our budget book, you'd be able to see it, but in this next section here, you could look at a drop-down menu of all of our positions across the system. So in this case, I'm saying yes, we're trying to add 2 accountant 2 positions. And then I select accountant 2, and it'll autofill the rest of this here, which is already done. It'll show you what bargaining unit that position is in. It'll fill out their average salary for that position. And then estimate the benefits for the position and the total cost. And then it'll finally multiply that by the FTE that you're proposing to change. So this column will give you the total cost for those 2 FTE addition there. If you are, as in this line here, asking to reduce a position, you'd put that as a negative amount in here, and all the calculations would really work the same, but at the end of it, you would end up with a negative amount. Then we have the non-payroll form. And this one I'll make a little bigger. So this is really a grid, and it looks like a lot of information to fill out, but it's really just background information here. So on the left side, you'll be seeing the different state categories. For example, administration, mid-level administration, which is school administration. It'll have the full state descriptions here of what those categories are. We'll have all of the categories, so show instructional salaries and wages, but you won't be filling that out because it's going to be included in the payroll tab instead. So you could choose any of these. And then on the top of the grid, you'll see the different categories of funding. So unrestricted, restricted, and non-operating. And then for each of them, the different state objects. I know that this is might not be easy to do, so I'll go through the example, but if there's a better way you'd prefer to submit the non-payroll, even if you just want to bullet out, these are the specific things that I would like to do with it, we'll accept that and fill out the grid for you, which might be easier for if some people prefer that. So for this one, I'll just use an example. In column E here, we're proposing on the prior slide or the prior tab that we're adding 2 positions to the Grant Financial Management Office, and we're assuming that we need $200 in office supplies for those 2 people. So that's the $200 here. It falls under the supplies category and within administration because it's a central office administration cost. Again, that will total at the end. And the important thing really here is, and this could be all that you fill out, is the narrative here that tells us exactly what you're looking to add. If you complete just the narrative section and tell us the dollar amounts associated with each narrative, then we could fill out this form in the way that it'll have to be done for ultimate inclusion in our budgets. And then from that, you'll get to totals for the FTE. This section 3C, as it says here, will, this is a summary that will autofill from other areas. So you'll be able to see that I'm adding one unrestricted position and one grant position for a total of 3 positions. The total salary is all of this, adding to 312,000. And I'm offsetting that. If I went more into the details, you'd see some of the offsets for this. I'm offsetting this with some non-payroll reductions in central office to get to a total of a reduction of $27,000. Then there's this key section here where it asks you one of 3 questions. Basically, if you are, if your entire amendment is a reduction, it's going to ask you, what do you want to do with that additional money? So in this case, I said that for the grant portion, we would repurpose it for initiative 4, and for the general fund portion, we'd use it to reduce the unrestricted fund balance. If it were, on the other hand, an overall add to the budget, it would be asking you the question of, do you want to offset this with additional reduction somewhere else, or is this going to be added as an additional ask to the county government for additional funding? And then if it's neutral, it'll basically say no further actions needed here. Then just one more tab for you to fill out, and this one's completely optional. It's about alternatives that you considered as you were doing this. For me, it's helpful as we do some program analysis on our side to see what alternatives were considered, because often my questions are, did you consider X, Y, or Z? And to know ahead of time that it was considered and the reasons that that option wasn't recommended is helpful to me and might be helpful to your colleagues. But this again is an optional section if you'd like to include that. And then finally, that's all that you'll be filling out. But once we receive these, administration will be filling out this form that really comments programmatically and financially on what we're seeing here. So really it's trying to give you the full perspective of this is what you'd like to add to the budget or what you'd like to reduce from the budget. And we want to show you what's already in the budget related to this area. And if this was passed, how it would be, if this amendment was passed, how would administration recommend integrating this amendment into the current activities that we're completing? Then there's also on both the programmatic and financial side, a area here where we would describe, we would really be asking questions back to the board of that we'd have to answer before we're able to put it into the budget. It's really more clarifications in, did you mean for us to do it this way or that way? And then there's a question of, are there additional resources that would be needed from the administration side to implement this? And any concerns with implementation? And then are there any recommendations for a friendly amendment to this, asking the board to really change it in a way that would, if agreed upon, might make it simpler to implement? Then the additional comments. If in the financial operations section, this is very similar, except for instead of the programmatic side, it's the financial side. And in all of these where we're looking at changes to positions or budgets, we would like to include here what is already existing, so you have that full picture. So this one's a change to the staffing in the Grants Financial Management Office. So we would tell you what is the current staffing, so you know whether they could, whether these changes are needed. So that's really kind of where we're at. I hope that that made sense. And because this is a little complicated, this is the first time through it, as much as you need to reach out to us, we are available. I'd also just like to point out for a lot of these sections where you'd like to provide more data to your colleagues, this is a good opportunity because you're now asking questions to administration to ask those questions that where the answers would help you to provide the information that you'd like to for this amendment. So just going forward, these amendments templates are due back to administration on February 3rd. We would appreciate any early submissions because after this administration will only have 2 working days to provide the initial comments. Then, as you know, on February 15th, we'll have board work session number 3. And that's where you'll have the opportunity to discuss these amendments with your colleagues and ultimately come to an agreement on which ones to include in the Board of Education requested budget, which you'll be voting to approve on February 24th. All right, Dr. Harris, back to you for any questions from the committee.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Harris, for walking us through again the first look at this budget template that we're looking through. Colleagues, I'm going to ask you to use the raise your hand feature for those that do have questions. I know, again, like you said, there are probably going to be a few questions on this, so I'll go first while I see my colleagues raising their hands. If you all don't mind, I'll just say a comment first. It's important to note that the information that you're seeing within the template is information that the CFO and his team kind of sees behind the lines. Behind the scenes. The template is intended to be more of a gold copy of the amendment that's being put forward. And it's supposed to live through it throughout its developmental cycle, not only to answer questions or have collaborations from colleagues, but also from staff. I know, again, there's a lot of fields to execute within the template, but my understanding is that the expectation is that they do not all need to be filled in order to submit the template. Rather, it's asking the questions that staff may have had historically when dealing with these amendments so that they can just look at the template and have the question answered, as opposed to, kicking it back to us or having a colleague kick it back to us and, just say, what do you mean by this? I know he's included some areas where you can have charts and data and things like that if you like. Again, they're not mandatory fields. I think the most important thing is to get the idea down for what you want. And then from there, we collaborate with staff to the impacts. And again, most importantly, we want to see it get through development into implementation. And so again, I do welcome comments that are that can help this template grow or help this process in general grow. We're not locked into this. This is the first time we're doing a template like this. So this is really supposed to be a collaborative thing to find out what board members are thinking moving forward. I see, it looks like David Murray.
Thank you. I have some questions to better understand this template and the purpose behind it. So I guess where did this template idea come from?
Sure. So we were asked by the OBAFA committee to look at changing the process, both in terms of the calendar and the actual submissions. What we have shared as we've presented, I think 5 or 6 times on the process to this committee, is that prior to this, there was no process in place. And we've had many issues with this, including we've received amendments that could not physically be implemented. We received amendments that both general counsel and board counsel have said were not legal. And we have received comments that we did not understand. We've received amendments that we did not understand and that board members said that they did not understand. We think that this gives more structure. I would definitely emphasize what Dr. Harris said, that the only purpose of this template is to communicate your amendment to your board colleagues. and to help them to understand what they are voting on and why it's important.
Thank you for that background. Has the board approved this template?
No. This is something that administration has come up with, and we're happy to make changes to it if that's what this committee is asking for.
Yeah, and if I can jump in real quick, David, you mind?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so like you said, the process is what we put up and went through the full board. The template, on the other hand, is just a factor that we're still trying to iron the details out of. So like I said, we are, or Mr. Herbst and his team is looking for comments on this about how it can be better, how it can be less complicated, what board members like and dislike. Again, we haven't approved this. We're just trying to work out the kinks in it to see if this is something that we like to move forward with, moving forward. Hopefully, again, asking the questions up front will create more of a streamlined approach to amendments. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Right.
Sorry, back to you.
Thank you. So is the idea then, I guess, it's a lengthy document. Who is anticipated to do all of the work to fill out that document? Because I mean, it's creating quite an administrative burden for a person that has an amendment. So, where would that fall?
So the intent from the administration side is that this will be completed by board members with assistance from administration.
So the administration would assist in the filling out of it.
If you provide the information to do so, then we could assist with it.
Okay. And then I think my final question for right now is, does the administration provide the same type of data for every line of the budget that's being requested for us to provide an amendment? Like, can I find this level of justification, data-driven decisions behind lines in the proposed budget?
So I think that they're not all specifically in this format, but these are the types of things that are discussed for not for generally year over year when we're carrying things over, but as we're making changes in the budget, then this is primarily what we're discussing. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And I understand you all, have probably immense amounts of conversations behind the scenes, obviously coming up with the budget. But if I'm a board member and I'm voting on your budget, there's not this level of detail provided. But then if I have a budget amendment, we'd like me to lay out a longer list of justifications than the CEO has for her proposed budget. I mean, I would love if her budget had a format like this for all serious line items. That would be really helpful for board members, I think, at least speaking for myself.
So I think that from my perspective, at least, the difference is we're talking about tens of thousands of decisions going into the CEO's proposed budget and many programs that are carrying over. When you've asked questions about specific programs, we've answered those questions, but we can't now take decades of work to get to this point and retrack it to the original decisions. I think that if you have questions in any of these areas and how they, for example, really any of these, if you want to know how a specific thing in the budget aligns to priorities, how the positions impacted the budget of it, those are definitely questions you could ask in the process, and we'd be happy to answer.
Okay.
And
yeah.
I would again like to say that this is intended for board member use and to communicate with the other board members as you're ultimately going to be voting on which amendments will and will not go forward. This is not something where administration is looking to say we disagree with this or even that we agree with it. We're just saying our comments are going to be more along the lines of this is something we don't understand and we need further clarification on, or this is something where it would be easier to implement this way if you'd consider that.
Okay, and I appreciate that. And I mean, I think the emphasis on data-driven decision-making, looking at the effectiveness of things, I mean, it causes me to reflect on the fact that we do largely carry over many things in the budget for 10, 20 years, and only 1 in 3 kids in our system reads on grade level. And so, like, just in the way that we're going to be reflective in these amendments and the justification and the basis for it, to your point, I mean, it troubles me to be rolling over so many things that have for generations not served children just because we've always done so. But I mean, that's part of a larger discussion. So I'll conclude my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. And I'd like to again remind colleagues that any questions you don't get to, we'll put together a document for Mr. Herbstman, and he's able to answer questions. Alternatively, we will have the 4x4 meeting scheduled soon, so that you will have time to walk through this in small groups. Ms. Adams Stafford.
Hi, thank you. And I have a little guest here with me, so you might hear some crying in a minute. First, thank you all for this presentation. And as you know, I was probably the only board member to submit budget amendments last year. So this is definitely something that I'm very interested in. And could you possibly share the screen one more time? Because I did have a few specific questions. I think one of my questions was regarding the outcome of the template. And I think that was partially answered by Mr. Hertzman just recently. Is there going to be some type of like summary or evaluative like report that will happen before the February 15th meeting based on our work on this template that our colleagues would read?
So the intent was that all of your colleagues would have access to the full report, including the administration comments at the end here. And in order to help guide that February 15th meeting, there'd be a shortened version that would be primarily the information included on this general information page. That would be more in a grid format, so you all could walk through and discuss each of these amendments. And as I've envisioned this, at least, though this is a board process, would be that meeting would be primarily to discuss one by one the board proposed amendments.
I guess, so then my suggestion would be that we make that like non-evaluative, in that the administration is not saying whether it should or should not be adopted. And I would just really strongly urge that, because I feel like, because this is a very complex document, I think that could possibly sway board members if, you know, the administration does that. And I feel like that could be a bit, could possibly be biased in terms of how the information is presented. So I feel like it should be incumbent upon the board member to present the information, the research, what has happened, and what is the outcome of this template, I suppose, what the impact on the budget would be. My other thought here is that, you know, this is a pretty like significant undertaking, and I think that it does require like a level of financial analysis that perhaps board members may not have. And also it is going to require, you know, some dedicated time to meet with school system staff. And so could you talk a little bit more about what would be allocated for us to complete the forms? So for example, like, will there be like some office hours, some drop-in hours? You know, what type of data will we have access to? I know you mentioned like the different grants, like, will you all give a presentation on the different types of grant funding? I mean, we really, at this point, we don't have a lot of this information now. So this is going to be challenging for, I think, anyone to sort of dig deeply into some of those categories. So just my question is around what types of supports would be available.
Yeah, so I would say that information on the grants is available. It's available in the budget book and we have given several presentations over the last few years on grants. I think that what we're trying to do is take a step forward here. We're not able to, give all of the information that you could possibly need for this, but we're trying to do that through the question and answer process that really starts this out, where if there's anything that is unclear, we are able to provide answers to that. So in terms of resources or supports, our administration is available for any questions, both as specific to your template. We're going to be having 4x4 meetings, which will be scheduled very soon, to really go through in small groups of board members with the CEO, chief of staff, myself, and our budget director. Any questions that you might have at that time, or any sort of amendments that you'd like to consider proposing, and we could talk through anything that we're currently doing in that area to start that process. But if you'd like to make a meeting with myself or someone else in administration to learn more about a particular area, or to for us to help answer your questions as you're going through this, then we're open to that. I would also, sorry, I just wanted to go back for 1 second to the administration comments here. The portion to your previous question, the administration comments are not meant to say this doesn't work or we can't do this. They're meant to help support the amendment, to say how that we are going to integrate it with current things that we are doing, and really ask clarifying questions on it.
That's really helpful to know. I guess my last question here is around like the types of data that we can request. So could you go to the student analysis, or was that, am I making that up? Was there a student analysis? There we go. So, what level of detail are we going to be looking for in this particular area, like around like its impact on students? I mean, like we as elected officials, we generally are speaking with community members. We're getting feedback from parents, and sometimes those are things that influence our decisions. Are we going to be expected to perhaps is it okay if we conduct our own community surveys? Or there, like, what type, are there, like, when you say impact on students, is this sort of like hypothetical, what we think it will be? Are we looking at like evidence-based practices? Do you want links to research? Or can we survey students? I mean, I think there's just maybe a little bit of clarity around what we can do in terms of connecting with stakeholders to gain some of the information that would be needed in this form. What are you looking to see here?
So I think that this is more your interpretation of this, and you knowing your colleagues and what they would like to see on this. Again, this isn't meant for administration, except for if it is passed, this document will help us to implement it. But this is primarily to tell your colleagues on the board about the proposal that you'd like to make. And these sections really on the data-driven evidence is just one way that you could support your argument that this is needed in the system. So if it is just based on conversation, I didn't mean to say just, if the reason that you are doing this is because you've had conversations with community members and you feel that this is important, that might be something you want to include here, or you could consider it in other key considerations below that. But this, I mean, because amendments could vary in so many different ways, it's very difficult to make a template that covers everything. But really the intent of this is really to get the information to your colleagues in an easily digestible way so they understand the importance of what you're proposing and
Yeah.
have the tools to decide whether to vote yes or no on it.
So I guess my just last thought here, and again, thank you for having me here this evening and allowing me to ask these questions. I would just say, like, if I was a new board member, I might feel a bit intimidated by this document. To give a budget amendment, I would say, there a lot of information is required. My suggestion would be that perhaps instead of using this format, like perhaps you could take this content and put it in maybe like just like a document that says that these are some suggestions in terms of what you should present, like not necessarily like you need to do this calculation or you need to, be able to present from this grant pool and just subtract from here and, having that level of detail, but, maybe providing the sub questions underneath like a broader category and giving people a little bit of flexibility in sort of how they present this information. And I think that would, really encourage board members to engage in the process. So thank you so much.
And I'd like to respond to that quickly. I do appreciate that comment, and I think it's a fair criticism. I think that maybe this should be presented as more one option of presenting an amendment, and there'd be other options out there. So we could definitely discuss more with the committee if that's the preference.
Thanks, Mr. Herbson.
Thanks, Ms. Adams Stafford. Let's see, Vice Chair LaSalle Frazier, please.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. I think that when I look at this tool, first of all, I'm very appreciative of it because it gives structure to our process. But I see it as just a tool in that we can craft it as much as we need to use or as little as we need to use, but it gives us parameters, it gives us opportunities for crafting our arguments and then getting everybody's voice that's going to be included in the amendment. So I'm appreciative of it, and I don't see it as I have to do it all in order to present any changes that I may want to present. So I'm wondering if this is the right way to look at it.
Yeah, yes, I think that's definitely based on this conversation. Administration's open to what this committee suggests, and it sounds like the idea is that this is more of a potential guide, but that there's many ways that amendments could be proposed, and this is one of them. If anyone does choose to use this one, then they don't necessarily have to fill out every portion of this, but really only what they want to communicate to their colleagues about this.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Hersman. I think a lot of my questions were already answered in terms of resource available. I think it's important again to my colleagues that the small group meetings are just kind of the beginning of the dialogue that's going to be able to be had. I think Board Member Adam Stafford brought it up about potential office hours or things like that, or small windows of time where staff might be available, just to kind of hear comments from board members. And if they do choose to utilize this, then they could utilize it at that time. The effort we're really trying to get to here is to develop a toolkit that is functional for board members. Some board members, require this level of depth and knowledge when it comes to asking the questions and supporting certain things. Some board members, prefer a simpler approach of how we present the information. And one thing that we might be able to use, Mr. Herbson, I don't know where the skill sets sort of align with your team, but we might be able to look into using VBAs in combination with Excel to produce like PDF versions of some of the information that just makes it easier to digest. And that could be something that we move forward to, just another, again, tool in this toolkit to figure out how it is that we're best articulating board amendments to our colleagues as well as staff. See if I had another question here. Again, colleagues, with this tool that we're looking at now, we want to hear the comments about, again, what you love about it, what you hate about it, what you want to see moving forward. It's really supposed to be a dialogue, like we said at the beginning. This has not been formally accepted. It is a process that we're trying to get through to make sure, again, just kind of iron out those kinks to get us to where we like to be. Any other comments from board members, both within the committee and visiting? Okay, I don't see any other hands here. Mr. Hersman, I got one more for you. Scroll down for me. The last thing I want to talk about with this template is, I guess, timeliness when it comes to just having this kind of form that requires so much information. It's going to be really, really important if this form is asking for that level of depth and specificity within it. It's going to be really important that, again, staff is kind of able to tag up as needed throughout this process, because we don't have a ton of time to turn it around. So we want to make sure that things are kind of done relatively quickly, but very calculated, I'd say, because we do want to get as much information as we can in the form if you decide to use it. But at the same time, we don't want to hold up the process for actually getting something out there, because then we're back at square one. So I think it's more so a comment than a question, just to say, hey, you and I and the rest of the committee should work together to, again, look at what those resources look like and what that timeliness of receiving information looks like as well. But that's just a statement that we can talk about. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so I'm gonna let you off the hook unless you have anything else to say.
No, thank you, Dr. Harris.
Very good. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you as well, Ms. Howe, for your attention and support on this as well. Appreciate you. Let's see. I think we're done. Lost my sheet. Okay, there we go. So any follow-up steps? We have no follow-up steps for this meeting in particular. For those board members that attended, you have the template already. We are accepting comments, so you can send them directly to either the full board or just me and the vice chair of OBAFA, as well as our CFO, Ms. Lisa Howell, if you like. It's really up to you, as long as we get the comments in some fashion so we can compile them into one area where we are collecting the feedback for it. If you'd like to utilize the Excel template, for those that are a little more tech savvy, if you want to utilize the Excel template and put comments directly in it, again, that's something that we can do as well. I don't mind going through and consolidating those into a list as well. Next steps, we have, when's that next OBAFA meeting? Our next OBAFA meeting is not until actually next year, January 18th, 2023. So this will be the last OBAFA meeting of this year. Thank you for joining us throughout the year. We're looking forward to what's going to happen next year. We thank you for all your support throughout the year. And thank you to the team that's been providing these reports and helping us to get through each committee meeting and providing information that we needed. So with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we adjourn the meeting, but before going on, I'd also like to thank the administrative team that has been presenting budget analysis, et cetera. And I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chair, for your leadership with this committee. So with that, I wish everybody a happy holidays, and somebody needs to second.
I'll second it. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, very good. Hearing no opposed, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays. We'll see you in the new year.
Take care. Bye-bye.